The early 1970s was arguably the most controversial period of cinema. Due to recent reduced restrictions on what was allowed to be shown in a movie, filmmakers everywhere were lavishing in this new creative freedom as they engaged in this explosive gala of experimental media creation. Rules were being broken, thresholds were being crossed, audiences were being challenged, rigid traditions were being critiqued and exposed, whilst film realism was being integrated into mainstream cinema. Every genre of film flourished because of this: action, drama, comedy, thriller, sci-fi, and perhaps most of all, horror. And in 1973 came the release of three of the most influential horror films of all time, all of which were unleashed upon the world within a 3-month period of one another. Don't Look Now on the 16th of October, The Wicker Man on the 6th of December, and The Exorcist the day after Christmas. These three films would each in their own way reinvent the genre of horror and what it meant to be frightened in the cinema. Nicholas Roeg's Don't Look Now was a surrealist enigma unlike anything that had come before it. Praised for its anarchistic editing style which created an incoherent sense of unintelligible dread, the film is a masterstroke of psychological horror that befuddles the soul. Of the selection, it is undoubtedly the least famous of the three, holding more so the reputation of a cult classic rather than a mainstream sensation. The Wicker Man could also be attributed with this cult classic label, yet is somewhat more of a widespread piece of culture. These similarities of theirs were certainly entertained at the time, as the two actually ran in theatres alongside each other in a double bill event. Where Don't Look Now is this hyper-realistic labyrinth of absurdity, The Wicker Man has your much more conventional A to B structure. You follow the linear yet deceptive trail of Sergeant Howie, a trail that besets upon Howie an onslaught of obscene and deplorable spectacles which are meant to directly antagonise his core Christian beliefs. It's as if this devout man's deepest ungodly fears are manifesting around him, all to torment him personally. The film contains both the accessible characteristics of a straightforward plot as well as the contemplative deconstruction of the main character's psyche, all of which is complemented by a career best performance from Christopher Lee.
A heathen, conceivably, but not, I hope, an unenlightened one.
Finally, we have The Exorcist, which was not only one of the most notorious films to ever be released, but was ultimately a full-blown cultural phenomenon when it was first shown to the public. A film that had audience members screaming and fleeing the theatre to vomit. A film that showed something so extreme to its viewers that many felt as though such a thing should be forbidden. A film that today remains just as disturbing and infamous as it was on its initial release. Wines don't age as well as this movie. Most modern horrors don't have the guts to match this film's depravity. When you think possession, you think of this. When you think demons, you think of this. When you think horror, you think of this.
Gain for your holy apostles the power to tramp underfoot serpents and scorpions.
All three films so renowned yet also different, ranging from absurd psychological character studies to your more conventional scarefests. Every beautiful aspect of the horror genre can be found within this exquisite trio. One feature that all three most definitely shared in common, however, was that they were all each individually a major source of controversy at the time of their release. Among those aforementioned rules that were being discarded in this era of film was the forbiddance of explicit depictions of sexuality and violence. The gloves were off, and movie makers were going crazy with this newfound freedom of expression. Some endeavours for the benefit of the art form, others more so for the crass intent of attracting attention through outrage. Regardless, it was now the Wild West, and from this era of cinema came some truly wonderful utilisations of the avant-garde, examples of which we can exhibit from this trio of terror. Don't Look Now is infamous for containing a graphic sex scene between actors Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie. The scene was so graphic that American censors demanded the scene be altered. Specifically, they stated, "We cannot see humping, we cannot see the rise and fall between thighs." To bypass this, director Nicholas Roeg used an unconventional method of fragmented editing which intercut the scenes of intercourse with scenes of the couple getting dressed for dinner after the fact. Technically, there was no thrusting or humping on screen, it would simply cut back and forth, and each time the couple would be in a different position, leaving your brain to quite easily fill in the gaps. This editing decision actually garnered the scene significant acclaim, as it would go on to be hailed for its inventiveness. This ingenious choice enabled the film to surpass the censors, yet not rid the scene of its artistic purpose, which was to showcase this couple at their rawest moment of intimacy. It was a very vital moment to display, as the film entirely revolves around their wounded relationship. When it comes to early examples of matter-of-fact depictions of sexuality in film, Don't Look Now is a notable contender. Films could now express the passion between couples through far more visceral and perhaps flustering means. It was a new brand of brush with which to paint love. But where there is love, there is inevitably lust, which was a human trait that would also need cinematic representation. This is where The Wicker Man would step in, which featured an audacious scene where a naked Britt Ekland fiendishly attempts to seduce Edward Woodward's character. The antagonistic forces of The Wicker Man are persistently trying to have Sergeant Howie abandon his allegiance to Christianity. One avenue in which they go about this is by presenting Howie with the temptation of sex. Howie is of course a virgin who vehemently believes in sex after marriage. This attempted seduction is an acute transgression upon conservative Christian virtues, and that's the point. It's supposed to shake the core belief system within Howie and leave him utterly perturbed. It's an intense showcase of that innate human desire. It needed to be profoundly sharp and enveloping. We needed to feel how the sergeant felt, and the scene achieved exactly that, thanks in large part to the creative liberties granted the film by the avant-garde attitude of the 70s. The lust of that scene has a very tangible pulse. Also, the sheer contrast between this ultra-saintly Christian and this sexually wanton woman, it's only as effective as it is because it is so graphic.
Broad beams in their natural state aren't usually turquoise, are they?
Some things in their natural state have the most vivid colours.
Horror is a genre that filmmakers use to tackle these discomforting themes of human desire and savagery. Of course, above all else, horror has always been the lens we peer through to study and come to terms with the most vile concept of all, that being the very nature of evil itself. And what better film is there to draw from when discussing evil than The Exorcist?
You know what she did? Your canting daughter?
The Exorcist did such an astounding job at demonstrating what evil looks like that many perceive the film itself to be malignant in nature. That was a film that showed the world the obscene and debauched depths that evil would resort to. An evil of such unimaginable otherworldly heinousness that to a human brain is too extreme to contemplate. So vast and overwhelming that cinema goers would vomit at the mere sight of it. And to cinematically depict something so extreme, perhaps it's imperative that the mentality with which you go about this task also be extreme in nature. You must be willing to show deplorable things, distasteful, degenerate things in order to properly illustrate this concept. Whether you agree with this philosophy or not, you simply cannot deny that The Exorcist wouldn't be the mesmerizing sensation that it is today if the filmmakers had opted for any other method.
And the son of iniquity be powerless to harm her.
Your mother sucks cocks in hell, Paris, you faithless swine.
Audaciousness aside, one final feature that is embodied by each of these three horror classics is yet again something that comes with the time period in which they were made. All possess that dreary, stoic tone of the 70s, the authentic film grain making everything in frame feel seedy and contaminated, the matter-of-fact camera work giving us this cold and unapologetic realism. There's a perverseness to everything we're shown, a sense of phoniness that makes us feel as though the world we are seeing does not have our best interests at heart.
She wants you to know. I've seen her. And she wants you to know that she's happy.
This is what made 70s horror so deviously spine-tingling. This is a style that works for surrealist cinema, absurdist comedies, paranoid crime thrillers, introspective character studies, and most definitely psychological horrors. And it's a tone that has never quite been replicated in the same way since, and a good thing too. It makes it more unique to that era.
I've seen your little girl sitting between you and your husband, and she was laughing.
Looking back, it's difficult to imagine what the landscape of horror cinema would look like without these films. All three so scary, all three so iconic and influential. The Wicker Man is the quintessential movie about cults, The Exorcist is the quintessential movie about evil spirits and demonic possession. Don't Look Now paved the way for experimental horror. Would these concepts of evil spirits or deceitful malevolent cults be so culturally revered today if these films hadn't existed, hadn't so pungently communicated to us how terrifying these things could be?
Oh God! Oh Jesus Christ!